Hello. I'm all
It's
good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing incredibly well. It's an absolute pleasure to see you looking stylish as ever. Like, well, I guess you got to be when you work for Hypebeast.
Yeah, it comes with the job, doesn't it?
It
It's
does. It comes with the territory. It comes with the territory. You've got like ALD on speed dial, I assume. Nike, Under Armour. It's a good time to be in culture.
yeah, it's a fun time. It's really, really cool. There's always something happening. You kind of like wake up every day and new brand has dropped. People are having a cultural conversation about something. It's moving at a pace, which is fun. I think it suits me as well. I like a fast-moving environment. Um, so yeah, it's an exciting time definitely to be in culture. New platforms are just like popping up all over the place. So TikTok, YouTube, Instagram changing all the time. It feels like it's an interesting area to be working in for sure. And people are super tapped in, which is really fun.
Yeah, and like I think with social today, right, you have all of these very specific niche verticals that people are playing with. You've got like creators coming out of the woodwork, left, right, and center, and like owning a
Mhm.
narrative, or at least like moving a narrative and having a dialogue, moving it forward and across every spectrum. And obviously, the work you do at Hypebeast is hyper curated. I
Yeah.
would love to understand like a little bit about you first. I have so many questions, and a little bit about Hypebeast.
Um, all right. So what do you want to know about me? Let's
I
go.
just a little bit of a background for the
Okay.
stream.
Okay, amazing. So yeah, I'm a partnerships director over at Hypebeast. Previously worked in partnerships at Universal Music Group, and in a previous life, played football. So
Oh,
it's the kind of
some serious background. Oh God, we're playing some
yeah,
big
yeah,
dogs
yeah.
out here.
There's a wealth of like knowledge of kind of like sports entertainment, music, and culture. And in between that, I've managed brands, I have done content creation. So it's coming from all over the shop. I guess primarily what I do at the moment is definitely centered around how can we connect brands to popular culture
Mm.
through leveraging Hypebeast as a platform. And that's giving brands unique access to the Hypebeast audience in EMEA primarily, but also at a global scale. Um, and looking at how we can bring brands into a space where they're speaking to an audience that is super culturally curious. And I think the specific thing which is interesting about working for a media owner, and it was very similar at Universal Music Group, is that it's not naturally a sponsorship of content. It's very much about how can a brand step into a space that is owned by that juggernaut of a media owner. So
Welcome to the
whether it,
Ventureverse, my friend.
yeah,
We
exactly.
play the same game just
Um,
on two different sides of the ball.
Yeah, exactly. It's about okay, how can we leverage Drake's channels to speak to his audience in his tone of voice?
Mm.
How can we leverage how Hypebeast shows up in the US or how Hypebeast shows up throughout Europe using their tone of voice and allowing them and giving them creative control over delivering a message and how we connect to our audiences. And a big part of my job is working in tech, which is really exciting, and specifically working with big global tech brands, but also smaller ones. So, how can we again tell stories that bring brands that don't maybe naturally sit within that universe? How can we kind of like bring them into a space that is super unique to them, and super unique to us? So I love how certain tech brands which has been screaming for some disruption to happen within their space. Um, I'm loving seeing what Nothing are doing, for example. I love seeing the kind of like AI race at the moment. Claude just released their new campaign. OpenAI did the Super Bowl last year. Google search have been reinventing what does search mean in today's day and age when people can use TikTok, when people can use AI to search for
And
things.
then you've got perplexity with Lewis Hamilton as well.
Exactly. So it's all of these interesting spaces where users always connect to things through culture. And sometimes I think a lot of brands forget or under realize how valuable connecting through culture really is.
Hmm.
Um, when I think of one of those classic ads is the old iPod ads, right? With the silhouettes dancing. And it really felt like it was something that was relevant. How can you recreate these kind of moments in today's day and age where it's never about how many bits your screen has or how fast the memory is? It's definitely rooted in how does this make me feel and how does this make my life better from a cultural perspective? Because ultimately, why do we buy things? We buy things a lot of the time for social currency, for social cachet. And how do we bring and kind of utilize the utility of a product, but how does a product really make someone feel? And I think that's where we get into like these really interesting things around purchase intent. Why does Apple necessarily outperform other big brands in the space if they don't actually necessarily have the
break
best
that down
product?
for me, because we're Apple fanboys over here at Ventures, and been buying them since day dot. And they obviously just came out with their new, what are we on, 17, 18 Pro, whichever one, and also the Air.
Yeah.
What was like, you look at that release, what were the feelings on your end? How did you look at it? Did you think they caught the cultural zeitgeist of what's going on at the moment? Or
I
actually did
think
they
Apple,
miss the boat a little bit?
I think I don't want to be too critical of Apple, right? Because there was a lot of energy around how centered around their products. Like, is the product innovation really there? And I mean, I still had the iPhone 12 before this year, although I did get the new 17 Pro. And it's because, okay,
What color
what
did
is
we
the
buy it
value?
in?
Sorry?
What color did we buy it in?
Oh, dark blue. Dark
Oh,
blue.
good man. I was gonna
Yeah.
be like, I could see you as an orange guy.
I feel like in London, orange is screaming. You're screaming out for something to happen. Um, I really would say that um, products and product decisions are very, very different to how your marketing messages are going across. So I can't, if people are upset that Apple haven't necessarily innovated from a product perspective, um, and they're saying they missed the point, I think this year they've really done actually really well. People are talking about the new Air. People are discovering, people are re-engaging with Apple in an interesting way again. I think time will tell. They've done a lot of things in the past. They've done shot on iPhone campaigns with huge music artists. They've done videos, they've done films. This new Gen Lock feature, which is really about how can how can an iPhone really go into cinematic grade filming is insane. So I kind of see it as, look, from a product perspective, there's a lot of discussion around Apple. I think from a marketing perspective, just because of how ubiquitous that product is, it's always gonna just like take over people's lives. However, of course, there's screens for more to be done. And I'm always a big person saying, look, how can you really, really take the zeitgeist in a product category? How can you really speak to something that really defines you and defines the times at the time? I don't think that Apple have necessarily done that, but do they have to? That's a whole different question.
Do they
Just because
have
of
to? So
how
who's doing it well at the moment, in your opinion? Like, it doesn't have to be for partners you're
oh
working with at Hypebeast.
I love nothing. They're doing some
Why do
really,
they
really
do it well? What is it about it? Is it this challenger brand energy that they have, or is it something
yeah.
else?
I think as in any kind of category, whether it's tech, whether it's FMCG, you always have to approach it like you have to have that startup energy. You have
Mm.
to feel like you're constantly trying to break what you've built. And I think that I really do believe that nothing have that energy at the moment, just because of how saturated and still the market has been. It's really been probably two big companies, and then you've had the emergence of the Google Pixel recently, which is really interesting to look at. Okay, how can we kind of enter the race? And you've got everything from cameras, music, you've got design, you've got generative AI and how that's playing a role in people's decisions now. So I love the fact that nothing are rooting their product in design culture, and it feels like it's really they are trying to speak to other disruptors. If you
Hmm.
feel like you are a cultural disruptor, they're really trying to position their product in that space. Another really cool brand I think does this super well is Gentle Monster within the kind of like sunglasses and eyewear category. Where again, you're looking at people trying to just completely reinvent how we see and talk about products. And they're trying to lean into spaces that feel uber disruptive and something that a lot of these legacy brands stay away from. So when you have a brand playing in that space where it feels like they're leaning into like AI slop as a form of like speaking to people, if you're and they're using really interesting talent at the forefront of their campaigns, it becomes exciting. I think in an attention economy where you have 5 to 10 seconds, if that, to really hold someone's attention. In a world where everything is super scrollable, super skippable, your choices are so key. And I
Mm.
think it's very different talking about a disruptive, new emerging brand to these big legacy brands. And I think they have different purposes. They have different needs in how they really access the market and how you grow a market. Like, can Apple necessarily grow? That's a very different question to nothing. It's like, can Coca-Cola truly grow? Can McDonald's truly grow at a rate that's very different? Sometimes it's about sustaining, and sometimes, that 1% and 2% is more than enough for what they need to do for one category, just because they are the market leader. Um, but of course, everyone wants growth and everyone wants cash. This is the game that we play.
It's
So
a weird economy that we live in today. Like you mentioned the attention economy, and like I'm absolutely on board with that. We live in this world where everything is infinitely scrollable. We are constantly, battling for share of mind. So how do you do it
yeah,
so well over Hypebeast? It feels like an institution of culture now, rather than some like
yeah,
newy startup, from the Hypebeast era,
yeah,
of like both myself and yourself have been a part of, back when we were like, craving for these Nikes that came out and that hype cycle was there. How do you
yeah,
do it
yeah,
so
yeah,
well over there? This curation that you've been able to build, you've retained
yeah. I
editorial
think
rights, you've really created. I wouldn't even call it a community. It's almost like, fanboys around the brand, fangirls around the brand.
Yeah, I would say that positioning any kind of like cultural publisher now is has to position themselves as curators. And I think trust is ultimately at the center of what we're doing.
Trust in what
Um,
context?
we're tastemakers and we're curating what we believe the audience should be seeing. And through doing that for 20 years now, you create a level of trust that people will come back to your page, come back to your channels on a daily basis to discover what is going on around the world. Um, and it's a combination of aggregation and then curation that comes into play there. And I think once you've built that audience of people come to you on a daily basis, it's then, okay, how do we engage and how do we have a two-way street in which the audience is giving us energy back and we can give them even more back. So it's like physical events, it's magazine launch parties, it's discovering up and coming designers and empowering local communities. How does a big global platform like Hypebeast remain super locally relevant? That is ultimately at the heart of how you move culture. You
Mm.
subvert mainstream, you lean in local, you build from small upwards, and we grow with big designers, big creators, and big companies. And I think that's the heart of all of that there. It's a trusted audience in which you can continually add incremental value to them on a daily basis. And it takes a lot of incredible editors. It takes a lot of incredible fans and a cultural conversation happening and people interacting with content that shifts and moves the business in different directions, right? So yeah, it's really, really interesting. And it's unique. I think there's not a lot of cultural publishers out there in the kind of like inception
Out there
from
left
early
as well.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's not an easy business. It has a lot of ups and downs, and we've seen it publicly playing out. with other businesses and companies.
Hmm.
So I do think there's an element of really understanding your audience and leaning into it. And Hypebeast does a great job, and Hypebeast does a um fantastic job of trying to stay at the forefront of what's going on around the world and making sure that audits. But again, you're also seeing publishers um, doing that left, right, and center, and so it's a really unique and competitive actually part of the industry. But in general, it's really interesting that culture. The heart of culture is never monetary, which is
Mm.
a really, really important thing that a lot of brands need to be aware of when they lean into this space, right? It's a lot of art, a lot of culture has been done out of pure passion that kind of like creates itself into something that big brands can monetize in the end. And so I think it's really important that we stay true to what makes hypebeast the hype based, or what makes an artist an artist. Um, Making sure that's at the core fundamental part of their business, and then everything else kind of like happens from there, which is really, really cool.
You touched on creators a couple of minutes ago, and I want to ask you about that. Like this,
Yeah,
how do you think about them in the context of the work you do? Because they are, well, one, there are the businesses in their own rights. They're obviously producing a lot of content. They are crafting
yeah.
conversations themselves. Like, as someone that is at the heart of the curation story for a lot of people, how do you view this world of like people just making TikToks and Instagram content and building their own narratives around specific verticals?
Yeah, I think it's exciting. It's never been easier to
Like,
create your
like, do you
own.
integrate them into the Hypebeast like editorial? Is that how it works
Um,
these days, or is it just brand
a
to brand
thousand
now?
Yeah, we work with them. We work as them as part of our brand partnerships. I'm constantly having conversations with creators and their managers, and we're all going to the same events. We're all going to the same parties. It's a really unique time in where I think there's becoming, and over time, this will kind of like sort itself out in general in the economy, is that there's a distinction between publishers and creators, and they have very distinct different roles in terms of how they can help brands tell their messages. Um, and I
Break that
think
down for me.
you have a brand like Hypebeast, which is essentially a global publisher. It's been around for 20 years. It has a global audience. It's very unique, has a specific tone of voice. That'll be very different to working with an influencer or a creator that has a much more localized audience. And it's probably a more niche audience. There's not a lot of creators that necessarily talk about lots of different things. Like Hypebeast, one minute we're talking about interior design, next minute we're talking about tech, next minute we're talking about sport. Traditionally, a creator will probably touch on one or two um, different like personal categories. And I think there's much more of a personal connection to creators versus there's you being part of a wider community when it comes to Hypebeast. And so we're leaning into creators and working creators across the board, whether it's editorially and telling these really powerful stories about our community, which the creators are a part of. And we're also working in toe-to-toe with them and in tandem with them in how we embed them into our brand partnerships as well. And I think there's only more powerful ways that creators are going to start getting involved with publishers and how we can work even more closely with them on multiple strategic partnerships that happen across the board. A lot
Do
of our
they do
work.
they actually move the needle? Like one of the few questions that like sort of baffles me from time to time, right? Spend a lot of time with creators have tried to understand the world in every aspect that we cover on the show, right? And like when we're getting into the grass and like actually understanding the weeds of what is going on here, do they really move the needle in a way that you want to consistently engage with them?
In terms of creators for campaigns,
Yeah.
yes, it's undoubtedly. If you are a 18-year-old kid that's been following this creator for the last like 5 years, and you see them part of a massive like hype beast and YouTube campaign, that is super exciting. And if they're doing a massive pop-up and merch giveaway with
Mm.
your favorite fashion brand, or if they're doing a huge kind of like connect with your favorite shoes, like Timberland did. I think they did I think with Skepta in Shoreditch the other day. That is incredible. You wanna be a part of that story, and it's definitely dominating your purchase decisions. It's dominating um, how you see yourself, how you build out your own kind of like personal aesthetic and lifestyle. Whether that's from brands that you might buy, but also it's just having conversations that you might have. Creators definitely move the needle in that sense. And I think publishers just come in as the gateway to amplify and to be the megaphone
So
to
they
some of
have
these
the
platforms.
infrastructure, the creators that allow them to amplify their own messages.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of like how it all comes to play. So I'm always telling partners, and I'm seeing it already that there's a combination of the two. I don't think in today's day and age you're gonna um kind of like say that creators aren't relevant. That's insane. You definitely got to lean in and lean into like personal distribution channels. I mean, what Mr. Beast is launching like multi-million-pound businesses. Messi has a new drink. KSI and Logan Paul have potentially $1 billion company. Um, this is the power of personal creators with their own distribution networks. And I think what we're seeing is that the audience having true proximity and time with creators is only developing into a really unique proposition in that brands can leverage and also how publishers can also lean into and be a part of that incredible ecosystem that is becoming that thing in itself. And so when you have live events, when you have merch drops, when you have new releases and products, um, you want it to be everywhere. And because of how intense what we were talking about earlier, that attention economy is that everyone is competing for that same 9 by 16 space around your phone. And where are the different places and how many times can you generate that true kind of like valuable thing, which is word of mouth? How can you have people really talking about and thinking about your product? And how can you show that you're a true solution for people? And I think that's about trying to be everywhere and everywhere. Um,
What do
yeah,
the
it's
what do the tech brands do right that the consumer ones don't, or like the more CPG FMCG ones don't?
um I wouldn't say that they're doing anything right. I think we live in a tech first world now. And so, you know, and you got to define, what do you define as success, right? So if if you're launching, and what do you define as tech? Like when I think of tech, you've got like your big hardware brands who have become indispensable. I'm sure right now you know where your phone is. Like you
Yep.
can, it's in the safe right there, bang. We have like this on this like invisible like tethered
We do the pat
thing.
down as we leave the house. You know the vibes.
This thing is the most important, the most revolutionary thing in the world right now. That's why, Meta's announcement, and Snapchat's announcement of reinventing the phone, reinventing the computer, to be more wearable through glasses. This is the thing now, This is why I would say,
Do you get excited for stuff like that? Not from a tech perspective, but for editorially what you can now do, like how you can
yeah,
really push the boundaries of like what
yeah,
Hypebeast can do.
it's so exciting. It's really really cool. It's to be able to like just shoot things in new ways and to show a fit in a whole new way. And all the creativity that's going to come out of having new formats to connect to your friends and family and to your community. That's all you need. That's why tech is always going to seem like it's doing really well. But I mean, you've got in the FMCG space, you've got some really exciting brands, kind of like breaking things and pulling them apart. Like I love this kind of like rise of matcha in the last like
Perfect
um
Ted.
Yeah, Perfect Ted. Um, I'm seeing Blank Street on the high street. It's and just seeing like queues of people excited about new flavors. That is true success as well. It's just different. It's just that I'm using a phone 24/7 versus I'm getting that matcha once a day, right? So I wouldn't say that there's different levels of why how tech brands are getting it right versus it's I think it's just the product itself and like how we how we use it and what its needs are. I would say though, for me, I'm all about cultural marketing, right? And I think that there's definitely way more in these traditional industries that brands can do to lean into the true power of culture. And, when you see that magic happen, it absolutely kind of like breaks everything apart. When you see Gap and Cat's Eye do a campaign together that leans into nostalgia, leans into kind of like an up-and-coming music band, um, and leads into all the good things about culture is, which is inclusivity, but also creating just iconic images and leaning into
It's like we look
everything
if we hark back to tech a little bit, that Apple ad,
Yeah,
where they threw the was it the Mac or at Big Blue or Big Brother,
yeah,
and it shattered everything. It was cultural at that moment in time. It was like we don't want the overlord. We want to be independent. We want to have our own identity, and the Mac gave you that, or Apple gave you that at that point in time.
yeah,
And you sort
yeah.
of you remember that
It's
it lives with you. It's a feeling that you exist. I've said this in the past. I don't know about you, but the only reason I buy an iPhone is because I want to live the way Johnny Ive views the world. Simple as. Like
I love that.
I just want
I
to
love
live
that.
that way. I want to live in their world, and this gives me
Yeah.
access to that.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm not even gonna say look, that I am a true like Apple fanboy. I think that there's lots of reasons why we keep buying iPhones, right? Ecosystems, it's like being able to FaceTime people. There's lots of different reasons, right? And the fact that their cameras are incredible. Um, but the gap is closing. And I think when I see like lots of comparisons between like a Google Pixel and an Apple Pro, it's like the sometimes the difference is negligible. And it's really starting to be like, okay, once you start breaking apart what that ecosystem really feels like for people, I think it's going to be even more interesting where people go. And tools are going to be starting to become very, very, very important. We're in a world of AI, which I don't know is how that's going to change everything. But I do think it's going to completely put a machine gun, jet fueled engine on creativity and speed at which people can produce things. Um, and so I predict that there's going to be even more to come and how that's going to change the way that we interact with our tools on a day-to-day basis and what that will mean for the real creators in our space, your musicians, your artists, and your designers. All of that's going to just completely change the way we do things. So things are just going to happen quicker, which is
There's a narrative in tech at the moment of the one of the tech bubbles that we exist in, that brand is the moat, or brand is one of the moats, and actually you deeply need that connection to your consumer. You need these missionaries that show up and consistently buy every product.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
do you look at the world right now and feel the same?
yeah, 100%,
Because if
100%.
everything starts to look similar, it's actually that relationship you have.
Yeah, I mean, once there's only so many colored bricks that you can create that people are like, we want more from the design. Like we want more from what you're giving us. Brand is not only, I think there's a really good saying, that brand is the face. It's where people truly first interact with your product. And branding branding and marketing are two different things, but they have their own solid powers behind them, right? And when I think of if I give you a brand name, it ultimately brings up these certain feelings. Like if I say Jeep, I think of like adventurers. I think of going into the unknown. If I think of Samsung, I might think of just like mastering technology, efficiency. Um, if I even talk about other things, these are like the archetypes that brands lean into, right? And so how can how can you really control and dominate that kind of like headline feeling that people hear about or think about when they think about your brand? And what do you want that to then trigger in their positioning? What do you want the consumer perspective to be? Because sometimes, you know, when we think about Under Armour and Nike and the whole world of sport, which we haven't even touched on yet, but sport marketing is really, really interesting in that when I think of Nike and I think of Under Armour now, or I think of Adidas, they all give me ultimately different things. And there's a lot of space within that world in which you want to trigger different consumer perceptions, especially in different spaces. So when I think of like performance sport, you definitely want to feel like you get it. You definitely want to feel like you can lean into competition. Um, Equally at the same time, you still want to create feelings of inclusivity and fun. But all of these are very, very distinctive positions. That's why something like Burna Boy and On for their latest stuff together, it's a really interesting play. At the same time, you have Nike doing Didier Drogba for Air l'Afrique, which is really, really interesting play from those guys. I think it's like their RK1s, something like that. All of this is brand plays, product plays, but also positioning yourself in the market in a distinctive way. So it sounds like you kind of going around in circles, but everyone's playing a distinctive game. The most important thing is that these brands um, they want to separate from each other, but they also want to trigger like a feeling of like action in their audience. The worst thing a brand can do, which is where they sleepwalk into being irrelevant, is
Hmm.
just create good stuff that doesn't make anyone feel anything,
You want
right?
delight.
Um,
You want wonder.
yeah, yeah, and that's why, you know, when I saw Gunner being the face of Under Armour, and creating like that campaign that felt like it was straight out of, ironically, like a really cool like late 2000s Nike advert. Like that got me super excited. Like, okay, these guys are taking over American football. Like this is where it's at right now. This is a brand with motion that gets where the culture is at the moment. Um, and it's just going to be really interesting to see where these brands kind of like pivot from that. And football's the UK football, if I'm specific, is the next big space where I can see a lot of things happening in different teams, realizing that these are huge media entities that exist outside of the 90-minute game on the weekend or midweek, and how they're going to leverage that attention and that fandom that exists there is going to be so interesting. I mean, I know some of these football clubs are posting millions in like retail sales at the moment, and they're just growing at a rate because people love attaching sports culture to their everyday life culture.
Mm.
Um, but how do these different teams differentiate themselves? Como in Italy, and then some of these other Italian clubs are really starting to distinguish themselves. I think it was Napoli that signed a deal with Emporio Armani.
Hmm.
Like luxury brands getting involved in sport is a really, really interesting thing because these are working class, um, traditionally
But
working
it
class.
but it opens up the market, doesn't it?
Exactly. Just once you identify your brand values, once you can distinguish yourself, and speak to an audience and really, really lean into kind of like what they want, that world that you want to build over there, um, you're then able to leverage community in something completely differently. And I do think we're going to start seeing this movement away from purely a Nike, Adidas, and Puma dominated sports world in the world of football to lots of entry disruptor brands, luxury brands. And their messaging is going to completely change off the back of that as well.
And we love it, right? Because that is the ecosystem. Everything comes in
Yeah.
cycles. We found ourselves at the end of one, and we're sort of seeing these new challenger brands crop up. It's the beauty of startups. It's the beauty of the world. It's cyclical, and we've just got to
Yeah.
find the right waves within all of that. My friend,
Yeah.
this has been an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to doing this again on a sports marketing, like just straight up. Let's just talk sports, just like
Yeah.
rip through some old Nike ads together. Thanks so much
Yeah.
for the time.
No, no worries. It's been a pleasure, man.
I will see you soon. Peace.